Hi, my name is Rob Bucci. I am a margarita maker. I'm more than a margarita maker. I'm the founder and CEO of Stat Search Analytics. And I'm here today to give you guys some insight into the opportunities you have with Google featured snippets. People call them answers boxes. I call them featured snippets, but it's up to you. The point is that I want to give you an understanding of the opportunities that are in front of you. I want you to walk away from this talk feeling excited about the things that you can do to get your own featured snippets. So we'll talk about the opportunities, and we'll also talk about how to take advantage of those opportunities. If you want to heckle me, don't do it in person. Do it on Twitter. You can get me on StatRob. Use MozCon as the hashtag so everyone can join in. This is my favorite featured snippet. And you can guess why. It's because Google is the biggest scraper in the world. This is an example of a paragraph featured snippet. Featured snippets are a super interesting phenomenon. For the first time, you have this opportunity to break out of the organic pack and elevate yourself above the crowd. Google is actually taking the content from your website and they're putting a giant box around you and they're saying this is the best content in the entire world for the question you're answering right now, or you're asking right now. Think about what that does to the mind of the searcher. It creates the sense of instant credibility, instant authority. Studies are showing us that on-page conversion rates are spiking after people are hitting your site from the featured snippet. People are more likely to pick up what you're putting down when they see you in the featured snippet because they trust you more. And that opportunity is massive, and we're really excited about it. At Stat, we're a group of curious people, and we do a lot of research. And that's how we like to give people advice. It's not sort of like, oh, how do I feel today? I think I'm going to offer this sort of advice. It's usually advice that's based on data. And in keeping with that trend, what we did was a massive research project. In January, we took 1 million keywords, and we analyzed the SERPs. We went to google.com, desktop device, we grabbed those SERPs, we looked for the presence of a featured snippet. And when we found one, we dove right into it. And we got really deep into those SERPs where we saw the snippets, and we did a lot of very interesting analysis there. The cool part is that I just refreshed this data in July with the help of my team. And no one's ever seen this data before. You guys are the first people in the entire world who have seen any of this research that's come out of our company in the July refresh. And what's cool about that is I have this opportunity now to draw some conclusions from the way I see that data trend. Here's where it was in January. Here's where it is in July. How are things different? And maybe where might they be going? What opportunities are present in those changes over a 6 or 7 month period? To set the lay of the land, let's talk about Snippet Occurrence. By the way, my talk is super data heavy, so hold on tight. We're going to get through this together. We're seeing more snippets than ever. We crawled 1 million keywords. That's no small feat, but not hard for us to do. We looked and we saw 9% of them had snippets on them. That was in January. In July, 15%, 67% increase over 6 months. So all of a sudden, snippets are on more queries than ever before. And, well, whoops, there we go. They're worth more than ever before. This chart shows us the aggregate value, aggregate CPC value, of the keywords that are triggering snippets. 1.75 million in January, 3.08 million in July. So there's more snippets than ever, they're for more queries than ever, and they're worth more than ever. To get started, I want to actually walk through some of the snippet types. You've already seen this one. What is a content scraper? This is a paragraph snippet. This is a table snippet. This is a list snippet. 3 core snippet types. This graph shows us the occurrence rate at which we saw different snippet types. The blue is January, the green is July. And as you can see, paragraphs are predominant. That doesn't really surprise us. Most of the content on the internet, in fact, is free-form, paragraph-driven content. Google has given themselves the gargantuan task of having to go out there and provide people timely, relevant answers on the spot for these questions people are asking. And, well, they have to get that content from somewhere. The vast majority of the content on the internet being unstructured, well, that means most snippets are going to be paragraphs. But we are seeing that trend down. We saw less paragraphs in July than we saw in January, and we're seeing more lists and tables than ever. 2 things are happening here. One is SEOs, people who control content on websites, who care about featured snippets, are getting more savvy. We believe that people are realizing that they can change the content on their website to create better user experience in the snippets and thus drive up their CTRs. We also believe, and we've seen evidence of, Google getting better at being able to take content and format it into the format they want. I've seen divs end up as lists, for example. I haven't yet seen freeform content get turned into a table snippet, but I'm definitely seeing Google get the ability to start turning paragraphs into lists in those snippets. So Google is interested in chasing different user experiences other than paragraphs. The first core truth that I want you all to hold on to for the rest of this talk is that the format of your content determines the format of the featured snippet. What I'm saying is if Google has selected your site to be in a snippet and your content is in a table, that snippet will be a table. If Google has selected your content to be in a snippet and that content is a paragraph, that snippet will be a paragraph. By the way, we also see images on all three types of featured snippets. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because, well, what we see is a diminishing importance of images across all featured snippets, and you can see it in the data. Blue being January, green being July, a major downtick, especially for lists and tables. We believe that Google is not really invested in images as part of their featured snippet solution because, well, featured snippets are all about responding to voice search and mobile search patterns, and you can't really speak back an image to the end user who's doing a voice search. What we do know is that there's a lot of risk for Google associated with pulling images out because you have to be highly certain that the image you're selecting is actually the appropriate image that somehow supports the snippet answer. And that's why if you're going to do anything, just be Wikipedia. Good luck with that. But the point is that Wikipedia has tons of image snippets, and that's because Google has a high degree of trust when it comes to Wikipedia's crowdsourced editorial process. They know that they can trust Wikipedia images. So when they're using images and snippets, predominantly they're coming from Wikipedia and they're Wikipedia-based snippets. The truth is, though, is that Google doesn't really need to invest in images for snippets because they already have this universal result type of images. So if the query that I'm asking warrants an image as the #1 result, they're just going to show me that universal result type for images. They're not going to bother with the snippet. Speaking of universal results, this table is a bit of a lay of the land for the appearance of universal results across the entire 1 million keyword set. So this isn't just the SERPs where we saw snippets. This is all 1 million keywords. I just want to show this to you because I want to demonstrate that it's not that choppy out there when it comes to universal results. They're pretty much the same in January as they were in July. Yeah, we saw a downtick in images, but that's not the purpose of my study, so I'm not going to spend any time ruminating on that. The point is that things aren't changing that much. On the other side, we have this chart which shows how often we saw featured snippets alongside different universal results, like on the same SERP. And this chart is super important because places is 0%. It has been in January, has been in July, probably will be right now. The point is, you never, ever, ever see places results and featured snippets on the same SERP, not once. And we believe that's because there are two key different user experiences or search patterns. For example, when I see a places result, it's because I'm looking for a business, I'm looking for a place, I'm trying to get somewhere, I'm looking for a review, high local intent queries. When I'm seeing snippets, it's because I'm doing informational queries, I'm looking for knowledge, I'm looking for answers. There are two very different query types, two very different user experiences, and thus never the twain shall meet. You never, ever, ever see the two on the same SERP. And that brings me to my first piece of advice that you guys can share with your team and your audiences, which is local intent queries never, ever, ever have featured snippets. If you're a local SEO, Greg, I'm really sorry, you gotta go home because you don't get to play with the other SEOs because you never will get a featured snippet. Sorry, dude. While we're talking about people also ask boxes, while we're talking about universal results, let's talk about people also ask boxes. This chart shows us the occurrence rate of a people also ask box on a snippet SERP. So in January, 22% of the time we saw a snippet, we also saw a PAA box. In July, that's 44% of the time. It's a massive increase. We see a very strong correlation between PAA boxes and featured snippets. This chart shows how often the first answer in a PAA box was the exact same content in a featured snippet. 24% of the time, i.e. a quarter of all snippets had the exact same content in the PAA as was in the snippet back in January. In July, that's down to 5%. That's a pretty big drop. What we see is that PAA boxes represent this ability for you to actually figure out what sort of content Google likes for snippets. Because the PAA box is a collection of similar queries. It used to be that Google was using the PAA box to test different possible answers for featured snippets, but now we're seeing PAA boxes as a way to disambiguate your query, to find different or similar queries that might actually be a better answer to your question. Now, this is the next piece of advice for you to share with your audience, which is you can use the PAA box to inspire your content that you're trying to optimize for featured snippets, and you can also use it as a way to map out the query space for the keywords that you're tracking. And that's really powerful because if I'm targeting one type of query, but I can use the PAA box to see all the other similar queries that are surrounding it, I can start to build out a map of all the similar query spaces and all the similar questions that I might optimize my content for. Now, we've talked about snippets, I've talked about universal result types. I actually want to talk about the keywords that drive those SERPs, the keywords that create the SERPs where we're seeing those snippets. It's always a good idea to optimize for how or what queries. For example, what is a McTwist and McTwist? For those, I get a snippet for both of them. By the way, McTwist is a weird snowboard trick. Now you know, you don't have to Google it. The point is that when I Google them, those two queries, I get the exact same snippet because Google has gotten scary good at understanding the intent behind my query. They know that when Rob puts in a random word like McTwist, he's trying to figure out what the hell it means for his MozCon talk. And when he puts in what is a McTwist, well, that's very precise. There's no implication Google doesn't need to determine what the implication of that query is because it's a very precise query. But that doesn't apply for all queries. How do I build a roof? I get a snippet. Build a roof, no snippet. The point is that you have to pay attention to your query variants and your keyword variants. Snippets only appear for some, and even if they do appear for both versions of a query, they might not be the same snippet. Now, you might be the kind of devil-may-care SEO who says, forget it. I'm just going to optimize my content around the core question and let Google worry about the implication. I applaud you. Go for it. Don't worry about it. You don't have to take on that extra burden of worrying about all the implications. But it's something to be aware of. One of the things in our study that I like the most is we took all these keywords, remember, a million keywords, a million search queries, and we broke them out into individual words that comprised each search query, and then we grouped those words into categories. So we have a whole bunch of words that are related to financial terms, a whole bunch of mathematic terms, a whole bunch of health terms, DIY process terms. And now I'm able to tell you the frequency at which we see snippets appear for certain words. The power there is being able to understand what sorts of words might commonly trigger a snippet. This chart might not be super exciting. It isn't to me because I already know that snippets are increasing across the board. Therefore, these changes in the change column are to be expected. What I can tell you is that if you were to use a word in any one of these 5 categories, you have a better than 50% chance of triggering a snippet. I hope you guys understand the size of this opportunity now and how prevalent snippets have become. 1 in every 2 queries in this category, or any of these 5 categories, will trigger snippets. What is super cool is this. In January, there were a whole cohort of different query types that we almost never saw trigger featured snippets. Look at subjective, 0.41% occurrence rate in January, 18.14% occurrence rate in July. It's a massive change, 4,000% increase, huge. In fact, the word best, we had the word best 20,000 times in our data set, and not once did it ever trigger a featured snippet. It was like this crazy featured snippet stop word. If you use the word best, you never got a snippet. And now I'm seeing the word best appear in like 18,000 different queries that have featured snippets in my data set. It's just a massive change. So, next piece of advice. If you're in a space that revolves around product guides, buying guides, rankings, reviews, comparisons, this is your golden hour. Go out and get those snippets. It's been changing for about 2 months now, so you still have plenty of opportunity to go out and get snippets for yourself if you're in this space, because now that's opened up to you, and you can try to get those snippets for yourself. I love this chart. You guys might not know why, because I'll have to explain it to you. I love this chart because it shows us that things are in flux. I've been telling the story about how snippets are just up and up and up and up, and the opportunity is bigger and bigger and bigger, and the truth is, well, yeah, that's correct, but we do see cases where snippets just disappear for no reason. They just disappear. Look at the word salary. 77% occurrence rate in January, 68% occurrence rate now. The truth is that these things are actively being tested and changed, and you cannot rely, just because you got a snippet yesterday or last month, doesn't mean you're going to have that snippet tomorrow or next month. I had a snippet for my name for like a few brief, glorious hours, and then it evaporated. So I was devastated, but life goes on. The point is, I want to demonstrate that things are changing rapidly. In this just 6-month period, I've seen salary go down. Look at taxes and fees. They're going up. If you're in any way invested in getting featured snippets for your own business or your own web properties, you absolutely have to be tracking this stuff somehow. It just so happens that here at Moz, you have the Moz SERP Feature Explorer, which does a really great job of doing that if you're SMB, medium-sized scale. There's also Stat in the Partner Hub, which also does SERP feature tracking, and it's geared more towards large-scale enterprise stuff. Both Moz and Stat would be happy to show you what they have. Obviously, I can't do it on stage, but down in the Partner Hub, you can get a flavor for it for yourself. By the way, there are other tools that do this. If you're curious to know what they are, ask me. I've seen almost all of them. I'm happy to make recommendations. Now, we have this data on the occurrence rate for different format types, and I have this data on the occurrence rate for different query types. I want to intersect them. I want to take those two pieces of data and intersect them and thus draw out some assumptions about the content formats we should be using for different queries. These are 3 words in the finance category: salary and tuition. We see a very clear disposition from Google to use tables when people are looking for the word salary or the word tuition. Remember those subjective words I talked about? Words like rankings, reviews, comparison? Look, it's all tables. Google's saying, hey, when people are reviewing or are looking at comparisons of products, the best user experience is for me to give them a table, because they're trying to compare multiple data points in one view. It's the best searcher experience, and thus you can see it borne out in the data. Google's highly invested in showing tables when you're in this query space. Here's the info help category: course and programs. Again, tables. I want to give you some examples. Course requirements for physical therapy. Texas approved driver safety course. Medical school course requirements. Wait, that's not a table. Weird, right? In fact, it's a really crappy list. Look at the first result. Please note, students who have been enrolled in medical school and eligible to apply for admission to first-year class. That's terrible. Like, what information does this give me? I'm looking for the requirements for going to medical school and understanding what courses I have to take. I have a list of courses. I don't know how many credits I have to have, how recent those courses have to be, what level those courses have to have been taken to. None of that information is given to me. And you know why? It's because Google can't accurately find that information and put it in a table, even though they'd love to. This is a super, super, super weak snippet. It's evident that for that query space, Google prefers tables. So if you were to optimize your content into a table and allow Google to extract that with confidence, what do you think might happen? Remember, 29% of snippets are tables. This isn't a small opportunity, it's a very big opportunity. In fact, Google has really doubled down since January on the table UX for searchers. They're simply perfect for certain query types. Here's more examples just to drive that point home. Main insurance companies. RN salary Los Angeles. Best miles reward credit card. Online nursing school. This one's a bit crappy, actually, because you look at the right column, they couldn't find the header for it. So if I was this company, I'd be trying to optimize that snippet. Online accredited Christian colleges. Again, a list, but the query is very similar to other queries in this query space, and once again, I'm getting this list, and not a very good user experience, or at least it's a user experience that we know we could make better with more data, because people want to compare different Christian colleges. Let's look at that website. Here we see that there actually are 4 data points that they're providing. The name of the university, the score. Sorry, I flipped you guys off. I didn't mean to count like that. Online cost per credit, religious affiliation. So there are 4 key points that they would love to surface. If you look at the HTML, you see it's in divs. Google's so desperate to give people something other than a paragraph for this query that they put the legwork into being able to take that div and turn it into a list. And they've done the best they can. But this is a super weak snippet. If you were to put this data in a table so that Google can extract it with confidence, you will take it from them. And that's a very key piece of advice I have for you all to share with your team and share with your audiences. You can steal weak snippets. Use the format Google really wants to see for a query. If you're paying attention to the data and you're tracking that you have set up, you're going to be able to see in my query space what snippets are tables, what snippets are lists, what snippets are paragraphs. If you spot queries that have outlier formats, i.e. they're not the format that's most common in that query space, target it. It's one of those rare situations where your interests and Google's interests are closely aligned. You want traffic. Google wants to provide people with timely answers and good experiences. If you put the content in a format that helps Google give people a good search experience, you win, Google wins, the searcher wins, the person whose snippet you stole doesn't win, but life goes on. Now, there are other snippet query types, other snippet formats, of course. I mentioned that there's also lists and paragraphs. Let's take a minute to look at some of those. This chart shows us the breakdown of formats for words in the general question category. We see a really strong disposition towards paragraphs throughout, except for the word how. How is kind of a funny word, because I can say how, like, how do I poach an egg? And I get a list because I'm getting instructions on how to poach an egg. I can't believe people ask this. It's not hard, like hot water and an egg. Don't be lazy. But also, like, I get a paragraph and I go, how does evaporation work? Because I'm not asking for instructions or directions. I'm looking for knowledge. If I say, how do I wax a car? I'm looking for instructions because I know nothing about cars. If I ask, how do frogs croak? It's because I'm answering my nephew's weird questions and I need a paragraph. You could also take an example like, how does global warming occur? In which case you get like a paragraph because that's a knowledge question. Technically, it could be a list of steps to cause global warming if the first step was greed, but I digress. That brings me to my next point. Share this with your team, share it with your audience. You should base your decisions on how to format your site content based on the formats of the featured snippets you're seeing in your query space. There's a good rule of thumb. You could say, okay, if I'm doing like informational answers, I'm going to do a paragraph. If I'm giving people directions on how to find something or how to do something, I'm going to use a list. If I'm trying to optimize for an experience where people need to compare or review multiple data sets in one view, I should use a table. That's probably a pretty reliable rule of thumb, but if it were me, and I had access to really good tracking to look at these snippets and understand the different trends for different formats for different query spaces, I would let that information tell me how to structure my on-site content. Another piece of advice for you all. I sense a gold rush coming, and this is one I'm really excited about, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. First of all, online nursing schools. This is the United States. In my mythical land of hockey and plaid, we lose out. We don't get any snippets for this query. But I know that there are Canadians who want this answer to appear in the SERPs. But you think about that user experience. If I was in Canada and I was looking for online nursing schools, and I Googled and I saw a snippet that had United States information in it, that's not a very good experience for me. And Google knows that, so they're not showing a snippet here because they haven't yet been able to source the right content for the snippet in Canada. But what I am telling you is that we're seeing featured snippets roll out to all these other countries. So what you know is you're able to look at your market of the United States, and if you see a snippet there, but you don't see a corresponding snippet in another geographic market, understand that that's an opportunity for you. If it makes sense for your business, consider creating geographically relevant content in those other markets so that you can take over some of those snippets. Now, I want to take some time and wrap up some of the key advice I have for you all. The first thing that I want to get out of the way, though, is I want you all to understand that featured snippets aren't going anywhere. We do this thing as SEOs where we get excited about like the latest trend, like authorship or something maybe, and we like chase it and we put all this work into it, and all of a sudden, boom, it's gone, right? And we're like, fuck, I can't swear. We're all like, darn, can't do that. The point is that we're used to being burned by Google changing their opinions or changing how they do things. And what I'm here to tell you is that I believe featured snippets aren't going anywhere. They're a cornerstone of Google's strategy when it comes to voice search. As people switch over to mobile devices and voice search experiences, they're speaking to their phones and their devices, and they're verbally asking queries. And the best experience is to have an answer spoken back to them. Google needs something to do. Needs something that allows them to do that. You can't do that with typical organic results. Therefore, featured snippets are super important to that strategy. So what I'm trying to say is don't be afraid of investing yourself in this opportunity. If it does disappear, please don't go lynch mob on me and come after me. Now, to recap some of the advice for you all. First thing, You have to use something to track this. The data is changing too quickly, it's moving too fast, the change is too rapid, and there's just too many potential queries that you could target that you might not even think about. You have to use something to track it. There are lots of great tools out there that can do it, and if you're curious to learn about them, come talk to me. Oop, went too fast. Local intent queries never have featured snippets. Remember, if you're in the local space and you're going after, let's say you're working for a hotel property and you're looking at SERPs for queries that have places results on them, don't even think that you're going to get a featured snippet because you're not. They will never be on the same query. Number 3, let those people also ask boxes inspire your own featured snippet content. Google is literally telling you, hey, here's the answers that we think are the best answers for similar queries, and you can use that content to help inspire what you should be putting on your own site. You can also use that as an opportunity to build out that universe of your query space, which is very, very hard to do, by the way. Keyword research is an incredibly fraught domain, and the people also ask box is kind of like a little skeleton key into that, where you can see all the similar queries that are related to the root query that you're targeting. 4, pay attention to those variants. Snippets only appear for some variants and they don't appear for others, and if they do appear for both, they might not even be the same snippet. So if you're really like crossing your T's and dotting your I's, that means our research got a little bit harder. 5, remember, if you're in a space that revolves around reviews, product reviews, rankings, buyer's guides, comparisons, go out and get those snippets. There's tons of queries in that space that do not yet have snippets, but we're seeing them accumulate every day. 6, you can steal weak snippets. I think this is probably my favorite takeaway for you all to remember. Pay attention to the data, spot opportunities, steal weak snippets, create better searcher experiences for your audience, help Google out and win in the process. That almost never happens. 7, when you are deciding to structure your on-site content, make sure you're paying attention to what you're seeing in the formats and structure your content to suit. 8, look for those missing featured snippets in other markets. I would love to see more great snippets in Canada, and I'm relying on all of you to help me have a better experience when I use Google. Now, that's my snippet that I had for a while, which disappeared and devastated me. But you can see it did exist. I want to tell you all, if you want to download the white paper, there was a very intense, long PDF that we created about all this data. And you can also get the data set, the actual data that went into this talk and my previous talks on the subject, and the slides from this talk. You go to getstat.com/moz. We'd be happy to hook you up with that. But for now, that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rob. All right, we have 3 minutes for some quick-fire questions.
All right.
A question from a Rand Fishkin, I think.
Who's that?
He wants to know if there's if you've got any ideas or insights into what Google might be looking at to decide whether they're going to give a snippet to this search result and when they're going to take it away. So
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to speak right to you. I wanted so bad to crack that nut. We looked at like domain authority, page authority, link metrics, social metrics. We pulled apart Fleisch-Kincaid reading scores. We looked at like really weird things like keyword density, even all that. I couldn't really pull anything that I thought was meaningful enough or that I was confident enough to share with the audience. So unfortunately, I have to say I don't have that answer. It absolutely could be like your time on site, your bounce rate, the topical authority that you have. Some of the stuff Joe was just talking about there, could definitely be a part of it. I just have not yet had the time or the enough data to really be able to confidently make any recommendations there.
Next year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I hope.
A couple of people asked a similar question. Hopefully you can clear this up for people quickly. Do you have to be ranking in a certain organic position? Do you have to be #1?
That's what's super, super cool. Okay, so it's this bizarre opportunity where you can win the game by not even playing because you don't have to be in position 1 to get to the top of the featured snippet. You can be in position number 4 or 5 and leapfrog everyone into that position. And interestingly, we note that when you query SERPs that are larger, more than 10 results, the snippet can come from any position on the SERP. So if it's a 100 result SERP, that snippet can come from position 50. It's highly dynamic based on the number of results that are in the SERP.
Not even the top 10?
Oh yeah, no. It depends on what kind of SERP you're looking at. The most common SERP your users, my mom and dad, are seeing 10 by 10 SERPs, so 10 results deep, 10 pages long, right? And in those cases, you're seeing snippets come out of position 5, 6. Pretty common. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You might have to disappoint us with an answer to this one, but is there any way to actually track clicks on these results? Can we differentiate between a click on this result and a regular search result?
No, not thanks to Google. I mean, like, they don't want us to be able to do any of that stuff, right? So there's no way for me to be able to tell you definitively if this piece of traffic came from a featured snippet or came from an organic result. You can make inferences based on the amount of traffic that you're getting. Let's say it's a highly targeted landing page that clearly could only rank for a narrow set of queries, and your organic is quite low, and you know you're in the featured snippet and your traffic's going high. You know that the majority of that's coming from the featured snippet. But it's actually a good question. Now I want to look at some of those studies about where they looked at conversion rate on page and ask, how do they know for sure that those conversions or those visits were coming from the snippet?
Okay.
Yeah.
A few questions were about the value of doing this and whether people were staying on the search result when they read a snippet or whether they are actually clicking through. Is it generating real value, which is...
I have really good advice here, actually. So take, for example, let's say I was telling someone, I lost a button. What a shame. Let's say I was saying to somebody that I was trying to teach them how to make toast, okay? I would never do that. But the snippet is like step 1, put the bread in the toaster, step 2, toast the bread, step 3, eat it, right? If I added a 4th or 5th step so that it was truncated in the snippet, i.e. you didn't get the full set of like steps to make toast, people would be more likely to click on it to get the whole set, right? So think about how you can optimize your snippets by making it so that you don't give away the entire farm in the snippet. They have to go through to your website and actually get that information.
Okay, last real quick question, because a bunch of people asked this and none of them used language I can read on stage. What was the $1,000 cost per click that you showed in the data set? Really?
I think it was CRM.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure, though. You know what? Okay, so you go to that landing page, getstat.com/moz, the whole data set's there. Download it and tell me. I think it's CRM, but I don't know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Rob Bucci, thank you so much.
Thank you.